Hi there, my name's Justin Van Toorn. I'm the president and CEO of Greenheart Gold.
Justin, good to see you, man.
Good to see you, man.
So we spoke recently, so this is really
Well, I was sweating in the field.
Yeah, but you know, that went on so well. People sort of saying what it's actually like live on site, and it's sort of a temporary camp, you know. Yeah. Early days. No, well done. No, but that was good stuff. Look, but you're performing a different function this week at Beaver Creek. You're here meeting investors and so forth. You still remember fondly money you made from the reunion. So how's it going?
No, very good. I think we've obviously got a very full calendar while we're here. I think the story is resonating quite well because we're in that kind of unique space of being a well-capitalized junior explorer that's got quite an exciting portfolio of very new projects across the Guyana Shield, and we're now at the point where we're a year into the company existing, and so we're also at that point where we brought quite a lot of the projects to the point where we're ready to start drill testing, and we've got 2 rigs running on 2 different projects right now, so that's very encouraging to see, and we're starting to see some better news flow coming out as well.
Right. Okay. I guess you're in the lucky position. You're a proven team.
Yep.
You've made people money, and you've got the cash to go on and hopefully replicate it again, if not better. Right. So attention is on you, but the expectation is on you too.
Yeah,
so why don't we remind people of the kind of core assets that you're targeting, and obviously I know you've been doing some drilling since we last spoke as well.
Okay. So we have 5 projects in the portfolio right now. We're actually looking at a few other projects that we want to bring in, and that's part of the process that we've committed to, which is we want to bring projects from very early stage exploration, and none of all the projects we have, there's been no pre-existing work done on them, so they're all brand new, and bringing them to that drill decision point in 9 to 12 months, and then basically we make a decision: do we drill? And if we're not going to drill, we're going to end up dropping those, and we're going to be replacing them with new exciting projects that we have in the pipeline. So we have 2 projects right now in Guyana, and we have 3 projects in Suriname. We're drilling on one of the projects in Guyana out at Tamakay, and then we're drilling at our Majorodam project in Suriname as well.
Right. So maybe let's focus, for the sake of this conversation, let's focus on those 2 in terms of the drilling, and why you decided to drill on that, and on what basis. Because I kind of like, we talked about last time, the kind of drill to kill mentality of not wishing that something come true, but basing it on data, right?
Yep.
So let's go. Start in maybe Suriname.
Okay. So at Majorodam, we started what is pretty much our standard process. We want to build up that geochem story and understand, are we seeing enough gold in the geochem response that there's enough of a system around. We followed that up in February and March with an RC drilling program, and that was primarily because at Majorodam we're right next to a paved road that runs south of Paramaribo, so it's very easy to get to site, and that obviously lowers the costs as well. We did a number of RC fences across the soil anomalies. We ended up with some ore grade intersects. I'd say 30 meters at 2 grams. 40 meters at 1.5. So very good, encouraging hits for what was effectively quite a blind program based on just soil results. We've now brought the diamond rig in. The next step is really trying to understand the structural controls on that mineralization. And then actually last week we just put out a trench result from a road cut that we put in right between 2 of the areas that we RC drilled. So again, that's already giving us maybe a 800 meter strike length of where we're seeing grade along this zone that is also being very well mapped out by a recently completed drone mag survey that we just did on the property. So.
Right, and obviously something like, you got the experience of what you did at Reunion as well, but in terms of the process is very systematic and driven. But in terms of the drill targeting, where you actually end up drilling when you're trying to understand a system like that, what does that look like?
Well, so you got to bear in mind, we both want grade, but we also want volume, right? So we're looking for something that's going to be economic to actually mine at the end of the day. So the first step is, we wanted to follow up the RC results that we have, which in some cases means we're twinning the RC holes and pushing them deeper, because some of the grade actually ended at the bottom of the RC hole. We weren't able to drill deeper. So now we're able to drill deeper with the diamond rig. And then at the same...
Deeper meaning what? How far are we going?
We're drilling about 200, 250 meters in depth. So not particularly deep, but enough to get us into that fresh rock, which is also where we find a lot of the structural information, because it's obviously better preserved there than it is in the weathered zone. And then once we have those initial intersects and we have a better understanding of the orientation, then we effectively just start stepping out. So we go maybe 100 meters to the north and south, and we start to try and build out the volume and to connect the different zones that we already have in the other drill holes.
Right. Okay.
So it is still quite a systematic process, and at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to create, is a volume of mineralization that we can then put some economic parameters around and see if that's going to make sense.
Okay, and let's maybe talk about the Guiana, and then maybe we'll get stuck into questioning.
Okay, yeah, and then so in our Tamakay project in Guyana, so that's out in the west of Guyana. We just brought a rig to site also about 2 weeks ago, so we're about halfway through that program. It's about a 1,200 meter program. We're specifically targeting these very high grade quartz veins, which we know the artisanal community that's been working on the property, they've been mining alluvial material, but they've also been mining these high grade veins in the saprolite, and in some cases even going underground. They've done some small underground workings in places. So we're targeting those. We're drilling underneath some of the existing pits where we know these veins outcrop, but the pits today are quite flooded, so it's quite difficult to do much else. And then we're also testing some more conceptual targets within the kind of central zone where we see in the geophysical surveys that we did magnetics, we did IP as well, where we see some of these central shear zones where we want to test, what is the potential there, because at surface we've just got quartz gravels and we can't really see anything through that. So there's no other option than to just put a rig in and actually understand what the geology underneath looks like.
Right. Okay. And let's go back to a phrase you used earlier about you got to test the sort of economics of this. Now, because we're not talking about economic studies in the sense that we're not PEs and etc. No, we're talking about in geological terms how you interpret and understand what you're seeing, especially it's all shallow stuff. You get a fair few holes in there, I suspect. But how does that data set build up, and what is the decision making criteria?
So we want to see the potential for a big enough system that it's going to accommodate building a large-scale mining operation, right? We're obviously very different than the alluvial or small-scale miners that are working on the property. A lot of their methods are by hand. They're very selective about what they're mining, and they're obviously looking for a lot higher grade because the recovery processes are not great. We're looking for probably larger scale but lower grade systems that are actually going to make economic sense to a large company to invest in. So again, it comes down to grade, and grade really is crucial, as are the recoveries and how the metallurgical process works. But you want to have that volume, and you want to have a big enough project. And the size of the projects are going to depend on where they are, right? So if you've got a project that's very remote in the jungle, you obviously need a larger project to be able to build it. If you have a project that sits next to an existing mill, then obviously your threshold's a lot lower. And we have a couple of projects, both our EGAP project and our Majorodam project, are actually pretty close to existing mills. So the threshold for us there for a discovery that makes economic sense is obviously quite a bit lower. Yeah.
Okay. And what are the real kind of, you mentioned grade there specifically, and obviously people would go to that every single time. Yep. And proximity to infrastructure, clearly part of that. Is there anything more than that? Because I tell you why I'm interested in this bit of conversation, because we talk, whether it be gold, silver, copper, nickel, whatever, I get the grade is king. Yeah. And I'm like, well, yeah, it helps, but it's not everything. But what are the I guess important variable, or the other important variables to you when you're just doing early stage greenfield drilling over and above what you just mentioned?
Well, probably the
because you're not doing met work at this stage.
We're not, but then again, you can make some assumptions. So it's always going to be easier to get gold out of your oxide than it is out of your fresh rock. So the other thing we want to see, and that's one thing we were very fortunate at Oko with, is you had a very deep oxide profile, which means that you've got all that kind of free gold sitting in that oxide, which makes the recoveries a lot better. Right. So in oxide, you're looking at 97, 98% recovery. Right. In your fresh rock or your sulfides, it's probably going to be a bit lower at 92 or so. Right. So we know that, and we know from all the other systems and mines in the region that's kind of the numbers you're looking at. But it obviously helps that early payback of your mine development if you have more of that oxide material sitting there.
See, I really like that part of the interrogation of the data, because it saves disappointment later on. Yeah. And we've had a few people through this room this week. Perhaps I should have thought like that earlier on. But it's like that, getting straight. Well, if we've got one asset, we've got to keep trying to hope this works, right?
If you do things, if you're going to do things properly, you start thinking about this from day one. So, right now we're drilling a bunch of holes. We're going to see what the results come back at. We're going to make sure that we've got the grade and size that we want to see. Mm-hmm. But then, very early on, you actually want to start that metallurgical process and testing as well. Yeah. To just make sure there's no strange red flags in there that are going to make the whole process a bit more difficult. But
Right.
but we are working in the Guyana Shield, and the metallurgy of all these systems tends to be quite similar. So we don't really see too many issues coming up. But yeah, it's always something you've got to check early on.
Okay. Look, there's quite a few explorers trying to grab money. You're in the position where you don't have to grab money, which is good news. But you do have to be careful with it. Yeah. The drill program sort of extends through to when? You've got a bit seasonal as well, aren't you?
It's the summers are the wet seasons basically throughout the summer, and I will be honest, we've had a bit of an issue this year with an extremely wet season. It's a La Nina event in the region, so it has been a bit slower getting access made. Once you have the access made, you can work all the way throughout the year. It's really not a problem. It's just trying to build new roads, and in the wet season, it's a bit of a money drain. So you tend not to want to do that. So, but no, we our drilling program right now, we have a rig at Majorodam. I mean, I personally see that rig sitting there for the rest of the year, without a doubt.
But you're not ramping that, so you got one on either side.
Yeah, one on each at the moment.
So you wouldn't ramp that up at the moment.
Not at the moment. We want to see the results before we do that. And look, we've always told the market that yes, we've raised a lot of money, and the reason to do that is so that we can carry projects all the way through to the drill testing phase. But we want to keep maintaining our early stage portfolio of projects. So we do want to keep kind of a reserve fund that we're putting into new projects and bringing them up. So, likely for any project that really starts seeing success, we would probably go back and raise money specifically for that project.
Okay, and explain how that works as well, because again, I talk about some of the stories that come through here. They're paying a lot of money up front, and they're giving away NSRs at such an early stage. It's kind of crazy. The mentality is weak, shall we say, in terms of negotiating the right sorts of deals, given what you're trying to do, right? Because you're going to be able to dismiss these things quite quickly. So how do you put a package together?
Yeah, so we've kind of stuck to the same model with everything. And then look, we've had discussions with landowners who basically they're too expensive, and we said, look, it doesn't work for our model, right? We're not the kind of group that's going to pay over the odds for something. Yeah. So we usually do an option deal. So we basically stagger payments over 5-6 years, and then we would end up with the right to convert the property to 100% being Greenheart's. And then we would have a back-end deal at the end of that as well, and some kind of payment upon start of production based on the gold that's in the ground. So we find that works better for us. At the end of the day, we're not trying to earn into 30% of a project or something. If it's there, it's there. If it's not there, we'll give it back, and we'll hand all the data back to the owners. So, and then in terms of the market and raising funds, we would basically go to the market and say, well, look, we now know we want to drill X thousand meters on this project, so we're going to raise money that will be specifically used for that, and then that allows us to keep the other projects going in the background. Because at the end of the day, it's exploration. I mean, you have to play a little bit of a numbers game here and make sure that you've got more than one egg in a basket.
Hey, look, I mentioned to you at the beginning, Justin, like your expectations are different, right? Because you've had one major success. People would be thinking, oh, easy to replicate. In fact, you should do better this time. But it's true, isn't it?
Oh, we would like that as well.
Right. We all would. But, I think reality is there's a process that you're following and engaging with. And people need to understand the time frames to success are undefined, because Mother Nature will have a big say in all of that. So, but there is a point at which the kind of the sheen of the story comes off the longer this goes on, isn't there? You're sort of conscious of that?
Yeah, no, very much. And I mean, we're fortunate in the fact that we have a very supportive group of shareholders, and that really has helped us. This is the same group that supported us under reunion as well. So we brought all the shareholders over. They understand the process, and the majority of our shareholders are all institutions. So we've got that very robust kind of group that's going to hold the shares for a bit. So I think we've got a bit of a runway, but obviously we need to keep bringing news out, and that's why we work in these countries. These are countries where you can actually get work done very quickly. But yeah, that's our job. We need to keep the news flow coming out. We need to keep explaining to people what we're doing and how the progress is going inside. And we need to make sure that we're being, honest with the funds, which is putting money in the ground. And I think everyone who's serious about investing in exploration will understand that not everything is going to work. But the key thing is actually walking away from something that's not going to work and making sure you're putting more money into things that will work, rather than just holding onto something for the sake of it. So I think as long as we keep demonstrating that we're doing that, I think we'll maintain our very supportive shareholder base.
Yeah, keep honest, stay honest, and be realistic. No, appreciate it, Justin. Good to see you, fella. And when those job results come through, give us a shout, would you? Thank you.
Should be soon.